have quorum. Not all of our members are here, but we do have quorum, so out of respect for our witness, I would like to commence the meeting. Mr. Smith, welcome to our committee. Thank you for your appearance here today. The process in which we follow is fairly simple. We would ask you for a brief opening statement. Thank you for the one that you have provided me, and I think other members of the committee. Following that, there will be a series of questions by members of our committee, starting with the government side, going to the opposition side, and we will continue until questions have been exhausted. So with that brief opening, once again, thank you, and please, for your opening statement, proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have a very brief opening statement just to establish what I might be able to contribute to the work of the committee. So on August 3rd, 2016, as Chief Statistician of Canada, I wrote to the Prime Minister to inform him of three major concerns that I had regarding the impact of Shared Services Canada on Statistics Canada. Concerns that I had been unable to adequately address through in my view, not inconsiderable efforts up to that point. The first concern was that as constituted, Shared Services Canada represented a major and unacceptable intrusion on the independence of Statistics Canada. Independence is essential to the credibility of a national statistical office. I reminded the Prime Minister that the government had made a commitment to reinforce the independence of Statistics Canada during its mandate. My second concern was that the arrangement with Shared Services Canada imposed on Statistics Canada was inconsistent with the confidentiality guarantees given by the Statistics Act to persons and organizations providing information to Statistics Canada for statistical purposes. So either the legislation needed change or the arrangement needed to be brought into line with the legislation. My third concern was that dependence on Shared Services Canada was hobbling Statistics Canada in its day-to-day operations, reducing effectiveness, increasing costs, and creating unacceptable levels of risk to the delivery of Statistics Canada's programs. I advised the Prime Minister that I was not able to materially address these issues before September 17, 2016. I would resign as Chief Statistician of Canada in order to call public attention to this deteriorating situation. A situation that, in my opinion, was undermining the effectiveness of a key institution in Canada's democratic process. No material improvement was either promised or occurred before September 17th, and my resignation therefore became effective. Since that date, while I'm told there have been some short-term improvement in Shared Services Canada's support to Statistics Canada, I believe that all three underlying issues remain unresolved today, and I continue to advocate for these issues to be addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Mr. Whalen, for 7 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for coming today, Mr. Smith. It was our hope that we would have some other individuals here with us today, just sort of balance viewpoints, but thank you for coming, and at a future point in time, we'll have an opportunity to hear from management at SSC and perhaps your successors. I would just like a better sense of, given that there's been a consultation process, or our committee had asked SSC to go back and do some additional work in consultating, did you participate in the additional consultations that happened with the development of a new strategic plan for SSC after May of this year?
I was not, as I recall, directly involved in the consultations, no.
Did you have an opportunity? Were you asked to participate?
No, I don't recall being asked.
Okay. When we think about some of the things we've talked about with SSC in terms of managing the different projects, well, I sort of fail to see how it affects the independence. So maybe you can let me know a little more how using the shared technology infrastructure of that all the rest of government has to use, and they don't complain about their independence being impacted by using the roads of government or any other aspect of the technology of government. How is StatsCan affected?
Members,
There's a bell ring.
I believe the bells are ringing.
Already?
We'll have to, Mr. Smith, my apologies. We'll have to interrupt the proceedings for now while we proceed to the House for a vote. Sir, are you available? We have a 2-hour block of time in front of us. Are you available for that period of time?
I'm at your disposal for that full time.
Once again, sir, we will have a vote shortly, and hopefully that will be the end of the votes. We're not sure about that, but we will be back. We will reconvene. So we will suspend until the votes are completed.
Mr. Chair, is it a half-an-hour bell?
Just so when bells start.
Okay.
Right. So, all right. Members, I would like to reconvene the meeting and also to advise you that since I had been in a similar situation for 9 years when I was Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader, I suspect we'll be hearing bells again in about 8 to 10 minutes. Mr. Whalen, you had a question. I believe, Mr. Smith, you had heard the question. If you're prepared to respond, we'll try and get through as much of this as we can.
The question was in what way is Statistics Canada unique, and how does independence have an impact on whether Statistics Canada should or should not be part of the Shared Services Canada initiative? The notion of independence for national statistics offices is established internationally. I think it's well known. I think it's well accepted in Canada. Clearly, the government accepts it because the government has made a commitment not only to maintain but to reinforce in law the independence of Statistics Canada. So, but that argument does not apply to any. If you think of the 43 current partner departments of Shared Services Canada, no one is arguing that any of those other organizations have a claim to independence in the sense that it applies to Statistics Canada. But there are other institutions in the federal universe that in fact, do have that claim. Parliament itself, agents of Parliament, agents of Parliament are a particularly good example because they play in the same way that in some sense Statistics Canada does a watchdog role with respect to the activities of the government and its performance. In those cases, those institutions were left out from the beginning from Shared Services Canada. The one case where the issue of independence and confidentiality comes into play that was not left out was the federal court system. And when that was pointed out by the court system, the federal court system was removed from the initiative by the current government. So the notion that this initiative is inconsistent with independence and is I think well established, and the fact that Statistics Canada is the sole institution that remains on the list of organizations that are involved in Shared Services Canada, where it has a claim to independence, I think is relatively easy to argue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Before we broke, I had asked about opportunities to consult and provide your views to Canada Post. Provide your views to Shared Services Canada on their status and in their strategic plan. And you'll have to forgive me, we've been doing a lot of work on that other agency. But it was my understanding that there was an opportunity to work that Statistics Canada and Shared Services Canada had set up a type of a war room in the month of May in order to work out differences between them, try to find resolutions to their problems, including issues related to independence, issues related to adequacy of the technical information, adequacy of the assets to provide the service.
There was a group set up. It was specifically not to deal with those strategic issues. They were set aside. It was to deal with immediate operational crises, essentially, to find solutions that would allow, for example, the census to go forward and meet its full commitments, that would allow Statistics Canada to deal with the workloads that it is facing, because we were literally running out of capacity. So it was very focused on resolving short-term problems. It was not at all strategically focused, and it was not attempting to resolve the issues of independence or protection of confidential data. It was really focused on more on day-to-day operational issues.
Were those meetings, was it successful in your opinion? Were they able to deliver on the timelines, StatsCan and Shared Services Canada, to meet the goals of the census?
Absolutely not. Well, the census was generally a success, but there was one major project where we had made commitments to improve the web service of Statistics Canada in time for the 2016 census. Because of repeated failures to deliver in a timely way on that the infrastructure needed for that program, we ultimately had to go to a plan B in order to be able to disseminate the census results, because we wouldn't have had the time to properly develop and test the system in the meantime. So that meeting, commitments were given about the delivery. They weren't met. Other commitments were made about delivery of additional capacity we needed to operate. You know, when I asked about it the last time, my chief information officer said that not only did we not have a date for delivery, we don't have a date when we're going to get a date. So I believe some of this stuff may have been delivered in the wake of my departure, but it certainly, at the time I left, it was seriously behind, and we were very concerned about the consequences.
Okay.
Much. Mr. McCauley, 7 minutes, please.
Right. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Smith, and we apologize for the interruption. You mentioned you sent a letter or a conversation with the Prime Minister saying, you know, I'd like this or I have to resign. Can you just briefly walk me through what exactly that was? Was it a letter or was it a conversation?
No, it was a letter. It was sent in, written and sent in at the beginning of August.
Did you outline your concerns at that time?
Sorry?
Did you outline your specific
Yes,
concerns?
I did.
Can you tell us what you, from memory, what you stated in the letter?
What I stated are the points that I made in my introductory comments. I said that the relationship between Shared Services Canada and Statistics Canada was inconsistent with the internationally recognized principle of independence of national statistical offices, which the government had endorsed. It had also endorsed the various not this government, but the government of Canada had endorsed the various recommendations of international bodies with respect to independence. So my point was that Shared Services Canada has and continues to have an effective veto on any program or activity of Statistics Canada that requires any change in our informatics infrastructure.
Did you receive a response from your
I
letter?
I received on these 2 days before my resignation, I received a letter from the Prime Minister reiterating his commitment to the independence of Statistics Canada, and it really didn't go any further than that.
So it was
And the clerk of the Privy Council, you know, wrote me a letter, you know, essentially saying that, you know, stating his disagreement with the points that I was raising, which I felt, you know, was largely beside the point.
The Privy Council sent a letter disputing your concerns?
He wrote back to indicating the government that he disagreed with the arguments I was advancing in the letter.
Were there specifics, or thank you, Mr. Smith, goodbye, we
No,
disagree
the only
with you,
specific that was in there which provoked me to respond was a claim that Shared Services Canada had fully and properly supported the 2016 census of population, which really wasn't true, which I responded to. On the other points, I simply said we'll have to agree to disagree.
Okay. The website that crashed, who designed the website? Was that Shared Services, or was it internal through someone else?
Well, there have been several kinds of versions.
The census one,
the census one. That was not Shared Services' fault. It was nor actually was it Statistics Canada. It was resulted from a bug in a commercial software.
Okay.
A commercial database software that brought the website down. Okay. The website, you know, after we turned it on initially, was operating very slowly. And we determined that problem.
Colleagues, I see the bells have started ringing again. However, at risk of contradicting myself, only because Mr. Smith has taken time out of his busy schedule to be with us today, if I may suggest that we complete Mr. McCauley's question and answer and go to Mr. Weir, so at least that way we've had one question from all of the three parties before we suspend. And then after that, colleagues, I believe, if I'm reading the tea leaves right, this will probably be the last set of bells we'll have this afternoon, but we do have about 15 minutes worth of business in camera. So if we can complete Mr. McCauley's, Mr. Weir's testimony, we will excuse our witness, come back after hopefully our final vote for a few minutes of committee business before we adjourn at 5:30. Do I have concurrence with the committee to follow?
So are you suggesting that we are stopping now, correct?
No, as I've just said.
Finish mine,
Finish Mr. McCauley's, Mr. Weir's, so that each of
Is
the
it
three
a
parties.
half-an-hour bell?
Yes.
We should have followed the same process last time.
We didn't think there was going to be another set of bells. We hate
okay.
breaking with precedents, Mr.
We would
Matanza.
like to get Francis's question in, so the 4 rounds like normal.
Okay, fair enough.
We're going to be tight for time.
Okay.
Let's complete Mr. McCauley,
How
please.
much time do I have?
We have 29 minutes left before the bells.
Do we have the time to do that?
Yeah, we'll try and get Mr. Joanne's in.
Okay.
How much time do I have left?
You have got about 4 minutes left.
Great. You mentioned the effective veto. Could you expand on that a bit more?
Well, if you look at the governance arrangements for Shared Services Canada, there's nothing actually establishes any obligation on the part of Shared Services Canada to provide any specific service or volume of service to Statistics Canada. We transferred our resources. We were stripped of our, well, Statistics Canada, sorry about that, but anyway, the force of habit.
I understand.
Was stripped of the authority to supply informatics services, hardware services to itself, to buy them from any third party. They had to buy them from Shared Services Canada. At the same time, nothing was ever set down about what obligations Shared Services Canada had in exchange for those resources, and what obligations they had if Statistics Canada wanted to some way change in future to accommodate a program of its own, the informatics support and that it was being given. And the result is that there's no obligation, and the reality is that Shared Services Canada knows that and acts in that way in dealing with
in what way?
Canada.
Like, I know you said there's no obligation. I mean, none of us, we have no obligation to listen. We could walk out right now, but we don't. Shared Services, you said no obligation and act in that way.
Well, for example, the money that was transferred was more than sufficient for Shared Services Canada to maintain the capacity of the legacy data centers in line with the requirements of Statistics Canada.
But you're saying they didn't?
Had been for years. They decided unilaterally that they would not do that. They also decided that they would not maintain the data centers, and they would cancel the service contracts on the various servers on which our programs rely, creating enormous risk to Statistics Canada. And though I object to all of those things, there's nothing I can do about it.
Operationally, can you give us an idea of what they did that affected or stopped you from doing, by use text can, stopped you from doing your work?
Well, at the time I left, the project to revise our website services was effectively in disarray because we had not received delivery of the hardware infrastructure we required. In a similar another program that was building a new integrated collection operations system to increase the efficiency of our collection operations was also going into a stalled state because we couldn't get the capacity to deliver the infrastructure. We were seeing more and more tiny failures of our website, for example, or various processing systems.
We're almost out of time. Very quickly, what, if you could go back in time, what would you like to see different, knowing that we have to operate with shared services? What would you, or what would we have done differently or better to satisfy you?
Well, I said there were three. There were kind of. I have no issue with using Shared Services Canada as a service. I believe, but Statistics Canada needs to have meaningful control over its informatics infrastructure. It needs to be able to make a decision that it requires a piece of infrastructure be put in place and have it done at an affordable cost in a timely way and effectively. As long as the budget has been transferred, Statistics Canada has been stripped of the authority to do those things on its own, and Shared Services Canada has no obligation to provide those services. They effectively control what we're able to do, and that's that notion of some external authority being able to prevent Statistics Canada from doing things that, in terms of budget capability and its mandate, are entirely reasonable for it to do. Is incoherent with the idea of the independence of the agency.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Mr. Weir, 7 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith, for appearing before our committee. You've made the point that Shared Services monopoly on inframetrics impeded Statistics Canada's independence, and I wonder if you could speak to any studies that Statistics Canada was unable to complete or conduct as a result of these IT arrangements.
Well, we've never, because I mean, Statistics Canada will struggle to get things done one way or the other, no matter what the impediments are. And we've never yet come to a point where we were simply unable to find a solution, even though it cost us more money, delayed major projects, idled project teams, all of those kinds of consequences are there. I guess the most egregious example where literally we were a failure in infrastructure managed by Shared Services Canada actually shut us down for a significant period of time it was in July, and a failure of what was an uninterruptible power supply that should have been the safeguard, but hadn't been properly maintained and assessed, brought down our entire legacy data center, and parts of it were down for the full day, and that was attributable to aging, unsupported, not failure to maintain infrastructure, and those types of incidents are more and more likely to occur.
Yeah, no, that's certainly very troubling. Now, you mentioned as well that shared services was not particularly effective in supporting the last census, but you also noted that the problem with the website was not the fault of shared services. I wonder if you could speak at all to how shared services came up short with respect to the census.
Well, the one major piece was with respect to the dissemination, the website infrastructure that was required. I mean, I met very early with Lisanne Foran, again with Ron Parker, after he was appointed, to say that the census was a mission-critical project for the Government of Canada. It works to a fixed date. It cannot fail, and neither one of us in the room at the time would want to see that happen. They were also explicitly directly funded to buy all of the hardware infrastructure required for the census. We've never had an accounting of what the money was spent on, and we were given additional bills for things that they were in fact funded for, in our opinion. But at the end of the day, they did build and put the bulk of the infrastructure in place in time. The management effort required by Statistics Canada to ensure that happened was, by comparison to any previous censuses, enormous. But I credit the fact that in terms of the core operations, the major project aside, that they did provide the support we needed to make the census a success, and it was an enormous success in terms of all historic censuses of Canada.
No, it's certainly great to get back to a mandatory long-form census. I wonder if you could address whether the arrangement between shared services and Statistics Canada put at risk Canadians' privacy?
Well, my view, and still my view, because it hasn't been demonstrated to be wrong, is that the Statistics Act says that the confidential information holdings of Statistics Canada, information provided by Canadians and their organizations for statistical purposes, can only be in the hands of Statistics Canada employees. There is a provision in the Act that says that Statistics Canada itself can recognize other people from other organizations as deemed employees, but on the assumption that Statistics Canada is meaningfully in control of their activities while they're in contact with that data. So I have argued from the beginning that the governance arrangements around shared services, which require us to transfer to them all of these confidential information holdings, is actually inconsistent with the Statistics Act and a violation of the Statistics Act, because they are not, in effect, in any meaningful and acceptable way deemed employees of Statistics Canada. So that issue is still unresolved, in my view. The arguments, normally when I raise that issue, the arguments I get back from Shared Services Canada is that we have all these bells and whistles that keep the data safe, but that's not the point. The point is that by law, they shouldn't be there in the first place.
Right. Now, you mentioned in your opening remarks that you made considerable efforts to resolve these problems before taking the significant step of resigning. And you've spoken a little bit about the correspondence that you had with the clerk of the Privy Council office. I wonder if you can tell us anything more about which government officials you tried to talk to find solutions, and what they said.
Well, I mean, obviously, as I mentioned, I met repeatedly with Shared Services Canada and raised the issues with them. I met with the various secretaries of the Treasury Board and raised the issues there. I've raised the issues with the portfolio office of Industry Canada, which is the portfolio which Statistics Canada participates. I've obviously raised the issues with the minister. I've raised the issue with the clerk of the Privy Council office, and ultimately on August 3rd with the Prime Minister himself directly.
And did any of them propose anything meaningful to address these very serious concerns that you'd raised?
Nothing. I mean, quite literally, I've never received a meaningful suggestion about how these issues could be addressed, either within or outside the existing framework. The discussion tends to go along the lines of, well, the Shared Services Canada initiative is important to us, that if we let you go, there's going to be a lineup at the door.
Okay.
And so therefore, we're not even willing to have this discussion.
So your sense was that they were receiving perhaps similar or related complaints from a lot of other organizations within government and didn't want to make special accommodation for you for fear of having to accommodate many other agencies?
Answer, please.
That was my understanding, yes.
Thank you very much. Monsieur Drouin, 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank you, Mr. Smith, for coming here. I'm just trying to understand a bit the rationale for saying that Stats Canada is no longer independent, or because they're using infrastructure, or the infrastructure is not part of Stats Canada. And just when you look at the industry, the movement is going towards infrastructure as a service, or platform as a service, or software as a service. And for instance, the Office of the Auditor General, now it's an SSC responsibility. So I'd have a hard time saying that the Auditor General is no longer independent because of IT issues. And I'm just trying to understand, why is it that you say this?
Well, I think, if the Auditor General is participating now, is doing so no doubt on a voluntary basis, which means he still has control over what happens and whether that relationship continues and can withdraw. If that situation existed in Statistics Canada, I presume the Office of the Auditor General holds the budget. I presume that he's engaging with Shared Services Canada on a voluntary basis and is able, if he so chooses, to either withdraw, go to a third party, or deliver the services to himself. If I had that arrangement with Shared Services Canada and Statistics Canada, I would have had no problem.
Okay, but you still have, so Stats Canada, for instance, is responsible for their own applications, I assume, right? Because as most departmental organizations...
We are, but an application can't be separated from the hardware it runs on. I can write a beautiful application, which I have in the case of this new website. If I can't get the hardware to run it on, it's useless. It's a wasted investment. It's money down the drain.
No, I'm not here to defend shared services, but just trying to understand, if we go back to a pre-shared services world, there must have been IT issues within Statistics Canada, or I can point to other IT issues within other departments that had an issue.
Well, clearly there were. There were significant hacks of some government departments, but in the case of Statistics Canada, one of the things that kept Statistics Canada safe, and the Shared Services Canada and that whole, and other government-wide initiatives have forced us out of, was that we isolated our major network. The networks in which we operate on, where all the confidential data are held, were isolated. There was no connection to the internet.
Okay.
And moving towards Shared Services Canada forces us to create those connections, which introduces, in a way that wasn't there before, the possibility of penetration.
And the idea of shared services wasn't new. It was there before. It just wasn't mandatory. But I just want to go back to your, pre-retirement date or pre-resignation date. What happened? How many meetings did you have with shared services before this? Did you interact with? You said you've met with Mr. Parker.
No, I don't know the exact number. I had 3 or 4 meetings with Mr. Parker in various contexts. My staff, or my chief information officer, was meeting with them on a regular basis over the course of the summer, trying to resolve these immediate operational issues, and wasn't making a lot of progress. In the period between the time I wrote to the Prime Minister and my resignation, there was no meaningful discussion of any strategic issues. They were all tactical and operational issues.
Okay. And did you know about the operations prior to, you know, going back to a pre-shared services? Did you understand how Stats Canada worked?
Yes, I was
within
there
the
for 35 years.
Okay, so was there any, you know, predetermined or service level agreements within shared or within Stats Canada?
We had introduced some types of service level agreements, but they're less critical because we work in Statistics Canada works in project teams. It doesn't work in its hierarchy. It works in a project team. So when we're building something or we're running a large program, each area is represented on the project team. Each area knows what's expected of it. Each area is accountable for delivering that. And if the project, if somebody fails, well, it creates a problem situation that has to be quickly addressed. So generally speaking, because we're all working towards a very clear set of common objectives, there's very little opportunity for the kinds of headbutting that can go on between two organizations that aren't either linked by a strong service level agreement that lays out very clearly what people are supposed to provide and when and how and at what cost, or by that kind of common culture.
Okay. How much time?
2 minutes.
2 minutes? And again, did Stats, if you've worked there for 35 years, did they have an inventory of what was working or all their hardware and what needed to be fixed in the next 5-10 years?
Well, we did.
Yeah.
But one part of my mandate, of my tenure, was a complete consolidation of our informatics infrastructure under one management. I pulled out, it had been very decentralized. We knew what was there, but it was not particularly efficient. We had already taken steps to consolidate that informatics infrastructure prior to the arrival of Shared Services Canada, and we had already harvested a 10% efficiency from the informatics resources through this consolidation. So at the time the shared services came on, I mean, I think they kind of noted that we were probably one of the best prepared departments because we knew exactly where everything was and had it controlled centrally.
Just on the census, you said that you needed more hardware, more infrastructure, and that essentially census was successful, right?
Yeah.
So Shared Services understood that this was mission critical and that and they successfully did something with Statistics Canada?
Yeah. It was, yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
And I'm just trying to understand, we did the study a bit prior to the summer break. We've spoken to a few stakeholders, including former CIOs, and I can bet if I had other CIOs here, some of them would still be very frustrated. But why resign? Well,
if in the culture of official...
Difficult question, Mr. Smith, but you've only got a very short window to answer.
Okay, it really goes to there's a culture of official statistics that says if the independence of the organization is fundamentally compromised, you have to take whatever course of action you think will produce results. Having taken everything short of resignation, I thought I would try the ultimate measure and resign and call public attention to the concerns that I have. So that was essentially the logic. I felt that I had reached the end of any possibility of finding a solution inside of government.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smith, once again, my apologies for your truncated appearance here, but unfortunately, due to the circumstances, it is what it is. Colleagues, we will be having a vote in about 10 minutes, which should take a little over 10 minutes, which would put us back here probably around 5:15. Which is about the amount of time that I would need to go over a report from our subcommittee on future agenda items. So we will now excuse our witness. Thank you once again for your testimony. Mr. Smith, I would ask you one final question, however. If there are other questions that members of the committee have, would you allow them to correspond with you directly, and would you then commit to giving a written response to the committee?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, committee members. We are suspended.